Hello. Give this a couple minutes. This is the first time I've live streamed in I don't know how long. It's using the wrong camera, which is why I'm looking above where the screen is. There we go. That's better. It's fine. I'll just use this camera. And yes, I did use generative AI for the title. I'm just kind of lazily doing this because this is a big moment for me. All right, let me, I'm not sending this out anywhere. I'm just, actually, maybe I should. Put it on X, as they say. We'll see. The internet's a wild place now, and I've been keeping myself publicly off of it. So we'll see how this goes. You never know. Let's see. Is there a way for me to blur my background? I'm at this point really unfamiliar with the tool set here. It is not giving me an option to use my connected camera, so that's fine. And should I send this out on old school social media? I already did X, which is against my religion, but maybe I should. I should just full on sell out, because why else would I live stream on a Sunday morning when I should be in church? Okay. Guess I'm making this a public thing. Give it a couple more minutes and then I'll just go into this. Maybe somebody will watch it after the fact. Or not. And that would be fine too. Screaming into the void. Might actually be more neutral. Well, definitely be more neutral. Yeah, this is really screaming into the void here. I really wish I could blur this background, but I can't. It's a lot of things I wish I could do. One of the reasons I'm switching, but we'll get into that. So in the title of this, I said I was switching from the Galaxy S24 Ultra, which, as many of you may know, just came out, or technically is coming out. It's still on pre-order, but I got mine on Saturday night. And, or no, I got mine on Friday afternoon or Friday evening of the 26th. I pre-ordered it. I had the Galaxy S23 Ultra, and I pre-ordered the Galaxy S24 Ultra. Honestly, Samsung makes it really compelling in terms of their deals. You can get the best trade-in value for a previous Samsung phone, more than you can kind of resell the phone for. Really, they really pump up the trade-in price. But of course, anybody who's ever worked in e-commerce or retail knows that it's kind of funny money, right? It's like, so they say you get $750 back for a S23 Ultra. They don't account for any difference in storage. So mine has 512, but they would give you $750 even if it only had 256. And so it's not like they're actually giving you a value on the phone. It's more like we'll give you $750 off of this new device we want you to buy, which we are arbitrarily setting the price at an exorbitantly high amount. So it's not really you're getting $750 for the phone, but nonetheless, it results in a good deal for a new phone. So it's like, this year, the best deal you could get is probably like $650 for an upgrade to the Ultra, $650 to upgrade from last year's phone to this year's phone. And I did it. I took advantage of it. There was one discount missing because their website was having issues when I pre-ordered, and so I didn't get some small educational discount. But I wanted it. I wanted every deal I could get because I was already iffy on upgrading from the S23 Ultra to the S24 Ultra. What are the differences? The matte screen, that's actually a huge deal. It's amazing how much less reflective it is. It's a beautiful screen. When I got the device, it was beautiful. Flat, it's also flat. All the new AI stuff, faster processor. Cameras are kind of a mixed bag. I don't know that the cameras are better than last year's cameras. They're different, and some things are better and some things are worse. Like you don't have a 10x telephoto lens zoom versus it's a 5x this year, whereas it was 10x last year. So it's optical zoom to 10x instead of actual camera lens zoom, which is always better. I've seen a lot of videos compare them, and some of them say the new one's just as good, even though it's a digital zoom, and others say it's not quite as good. Either way, it's just sort of a mixed bag, right? It's either as good or not quite as good, and that's the case with a lot of the camera stuff, right? That's one example. But all the generative AI stuff, that's all in software. So that would likely come to the S23 line and below. Or I've seen people discuss that it will come to other Samsung phones over time. So that's a big reason to buy the new phone, also coming to other phones. But there is some hardware stuff, right? Like the new chipset, Qualcomm Snapdragon Gen 3 for Galaxy, which is slightly overclocked. It's actually faster than the latest iPhone for the first time in years and years. In some benchmarks. But to be honest, the difference in speed between Apple's ecosystem and Android is in the platform itself, how the platform leverages the silicon. And Apple just has a tighter integration between software and hardware because there's no variance, right? There's zero variance. It's Apple A17 Pro in these phones, and or Apple A17, whatever the flavor of the moment is. And then on Android, in certain regions, you can get Snapdragon. In other regions, you can get Exynos from Samsung. In other regions, you can get MediaTek. And then there's all sorts of other little variants. And the operating system has to accommodate for all of those. And it's not tightly coupled with just one of those. But OEMs do their best, and Samsung's getting better at this. So anyway, why would I switch from going over the S24 Ultra, it is a bit of an upgrade from last year, low key. It's actually, I think it's going to sell extremely well. It's made a lot of changes in areas that matter to people. And I could even see people converting from Apple to Android just for the new Galaxy S24 series, even the Plus, which has a lot of the features of the Ultra. But, I think, hello, whoever just joined. My lonely live stream. So I actually think this is probably a good year to upgrade to the latest Samsung devices. And it's kind of counterintuitive that this is the time I would switch, both because the iPhone 15 Pro Max came out last year. It's not the latest thing, and I usually get the latest thing. And the latest thing from Samsung is so solid in a lot of ways. But when I got the device on Friday, the S24 Ultra, first of all, one of the discounts that they offered didn't apply. I think that just gave me a push to say, you know what? I want to go in a different direction. I've been talking about it for a while because I've been in Samsung's ecosystem. I had Galaxy watches for years and the phones, and I was just always unimpressed with the watches. And I'm a big fitness guy, and more so lately. And the watches are so laggy, and frankly, Apple's Apple Watch is just a million times better, and you just can't use it with Android. That's a big factor for me. I wanted to try an Apple Watch. I didn't used to like them. I don't love the square shape. I like circle, so that's something that I really like about Samsung. But it's extremely difficult to use the way I wanted to use it. Just connect a pair of earbuds, listen to music, and track your various fitness things, and even do some exercise, what's it called? Your form, checking your form, etc. And just the whole ecosystem around Samsung Health. And there's so many duplicative apps. The ecosystem is extremely disjointed, and the watch itself is extremely underpowered and doesn't perform well. So the Apple Watch was a piece of it. I always felt suspect about upgrading to the latest phone because it got me a new Samsung watch, which I didn't really want, and a new Samsung phone, and I felt a little bit like swindled, right? Like, why am I spending 650, 700, $720 to get a new watch that I don't want and a new phone that I don't need? Because frankly, the features of the new one, the S24, they're nice, right? The matte screen is low-key big. Like, you see the reflection here? You really don't see that on the S24 Ultra. The new screen is amazing for that. But I don't need it, right? It's extremely bright outdoors. I never had an issue with that. To be honest, the bezels look worse in a case than they did on the S23 Ultra. The performance, you really won't see a difference unless you're maxing the thing out or you're using a lot of on-device generative AI, which probably is a big deal, but I hadn't incorporated that into my routines. And so I thought this will give me the push. So I just returned the S24 Ultra, and I made a crazy decision to get an iPhone 15 Pro Max and the Apple Watch Ultra 2. I got some good financing stuff on it, but ultimately it's not going to be as good a deal as it would have been to upgrade from this device to the latest Galaxy. I could have just stuck with this for a while. But again, I wanted to try the Apple Watch. That's kind of a key piece of this thing. So also, one big thing that is great is that the new iPhones, I don't have to replace any of my cabling now that it's USB-C. And I wanted to check that out. I understand it doesn't charge as quickly as these via USB-C, but I generally use wireless charging anyway. But I literally don't have to buy into a bunch of Apple ecosystem lightning cables in order to get it working. Another thing, I'm speaking to you on a MacBook Pro. I use a MacBook Pro for work and personal stuff. Their laptops have been better than any other laptop, in my opinion, since they switched to their own silicon, to ARM, since they went away from Intel. With Intel, I would argue they weren't the best, and they had a lot of overheating issues, especially the later generations. But this device works really well. And of course, the thing with Apple is, sorry, that's my garage. The thing with Apple is their ecosystem, right? Everybody talks about ecosystem. So I expect, and I haven't gotten the phone yet. So I'm going, this is the other piece of it. I'm going to pick up the phone in 2 hours. I will have the phone in hand, and then I basically have the rest of the day to sort of switch all the stuff and log into 100 apps and see how I can get into the habit of it before I have to go and be efficient tomorrow at work. And it's gonna be. I'm actually pretty nervous about it. It's gonna be a big switch, bigger than I thought when I initiated it, because I've had iPhones before. I had the iPhone 10R, XR, whatever, in previous jobs when it was more about I've had iPhones before. I've had iPads for a long time. Apple has been better in the tablet game forever. And so I've had an iPad. It's just a better media consumption device when you travel or if you want to write on it, right? It's just better. So I've already been in the ecosystem, right? In terms of the MacBook Pro and in terms of having iPads and some familiarity. But the way that I use Android, I do expect I will not be able to do on Apple. I don't think I'll be able to be as efficient even when I get used to it, which will probably take me, I don't know, a month. There are just certain things you can set up on Android that I don't think you can do on Apple. And I'm going to be curious to go back to this video and see if what I'm expecting is actually going to be the case or not. Another thing that'll be interesting is switching from Android Auto to CarPlay. So my my car, which isn't a Volkswagen ID4, it's an electric car. It has both. So I will be able to try CarPlay. My wife has a Pixel, and so she'll be using Android Auto still. I'm used to Android Auto. I don't love it. I don't hate it. It just presents me a Google map and I go, right? I don't really use any of its multitasking features. As I understand it, it's a little more flexible than CarPlay. But I hear people like CarPlay. It performs well. So I'll try it out. We'll see. I think you can still use Google Maps with CarPlay. So I expect kind of minimal disruption with that. One interesting thing is that the new Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra, which again, I did have for a day, and I literally switched everything over to it before backing out of the deal and returning it. This is the S23 Ultra. It has a custom Android Auto implementation that has extra generative AI features that I wasn't able to test out in my car. I didn't go on a trip with the S24 Ultra. Um, but honestly, like, I don't know. I didn't care about that. I don't need generative AI from driving from point A to point B. Maybe someday it'll get good enough that it'll become something everybody does, but I just didn't need it, you know. So anyway, I'm going to pick it up and the Apple Watch. Probably need to get Apple earbuds. And so the fitness stuff is a big reason of why I wanted to change. The other thing is, I've been aware of this for a long time, but apps are first class citizens on Apple devices. People target Apple first because it's the largest addressable market and it's more monetizable and it's simpler to do. Like I said, same thing with the silicon. You have one Apple chipset in Apple devices, so they're able to tightly couple the OS with the chipset more so than Android is. And that's how, even if Android scores better on some benchmarks, it'd have to be way ahead to truly be um, more performant for most use cases than Apple devices. But the same thing is true with the app ecosystem, right? So it just makes sense if you're a developer. And I've been in the world of app development for a long time in my career, and it just makes a lot of sense. It's like you can target one set of devices, 3 or 4 devices, and it can work really well versus Android, where there's a million different permutations and implementations and skins on top of the OS, chipsets and different quirks that have to do with all sorts of different things, and it's less monetizable in the aggregate. So if you're just building an app and you want to get it out in front of users, even to test the latest features, you're going to target iOS first, and it's pretty consistent. So I'm excited to see how some of the apps that I use on Android that maybe aren't as good. Like, here's an example. In my home, we have a level 2 charger for my electric car, the ID4, and I bought it from Emporia Energy. It's a Colorado company. They're great. They have really cool features. Like, you can charge on solar only, meaning just from what's coming from solar at the time, so you can be sure it's 100% renewable and also free, right? Energy from the sun. And it'll modulate the speed that it charged to match the input from solar. But it's got a mobile app to control that. And that mobile app is the Emporia Energy mobile app. On Android, look at that. It looks like it's from 2007. It's just, I expect, and I don't know, that this app is definitely going to be better on iOS. I bet that I sense that the team is small and localized in Colorado and probably very iPhone centric. Most American app makers are, because in America, 75% of people have iPhones. In the world, more people have Android phones. And I think that's a good thing. But here in America, anyway, a company like that, I expect their iOS experience will be better. App's very quirky. I have to force close it very often because once I look at some live data, if I try to back out of it, it just freezes. I've told them this, but it's just not I bet I'm an outlier. I bet most people with electric cars and level 2 chargers in the US have an iPhone, right? And most of them probably have a Tesla. So anyway, those are the types of improvements I expect from the app ecosystem. I kind of also want to shock people by becoming a blue bubble. The problem with that is, well, like I said, it's the wrong time to switch to iPhone, I think, for most people. It's becoming more like Android, and Android is getting features now that not just features, but useful implementations, including with the Galaxy S24 Ultra, like circle to search, where you can literally hold the gesture bar and then circle anything on screen and it'll just bring up a Google image search. That's a huge quality of life improvement that could really change the way people use devices. But also, and speed. Android is the chipsets are getting faster than the latest Apple Silicon, although we'll see if that holds. Um, but it's the wrong time to switch. There was a reason I was going to give you, but I lost it for any number of reasons. I actually think that Apple might start suffering a little bit of attrition to Android with manufacturers like Samsung and even Google in the U.S. It already has worldwide, eating into their sort of ecosystem play. Oh, this is it. Apple is getting RCS, rich something chat format. That's something RCS, rich chat. I forget what it stands for, but I guess I could Google it. Anyway, RCS is what Android has, and it lets you have end-to-end encryption and tighter. Like you can see when people are typing and have read receipts. Same way iMessage does for iPhone to iPhone, but it's a standard implementation. And so now, like basically, the borders between iMessage and just regular chat, regular texts on Android is getting blurred a little bit. So you're going to see, if you're an iPhone user, you're going to see Android users be able to, at least from your perception, do things that were exclusive to iMessage. And so even that argument is getting a little less compelling. So all in all, I probably chose the wrong time to switch, but that's not why I switched. And again, this is not something that needs to be permanent. I am going to try it out for a while. I'm bought in at this point for probably like at least a year commitment, at least. So we'll see. We'll see. But I'm nervous. And so again, I'm going to be going through the switch in a couple of hours. Oh, one thing, I use Google Voice, which on Android is fine. It's integrated into the ecosystem. You can make calls from your phone's number or from Google Voice using your carrier. On iOS, it's limited to the Google Voice app. So one of the things I'm going to try to do, and most of my calls and texts go through my number that's only on Google Voice, but I'm going to have to port my number in to my existing line and make my existing line, I don't know, maybe a Google Voice number. I don't know. We'll figure it out. But yeah, I'm nervous. The two of you who are here, did you have any questions about like why I'm making this switch, or telling me that I'm an idiot, or anything like that? I probably am an idiot for doing this. I didn't even need to upgrade from this phone, and I'm very comfortable with it. So this is definitely going to ruin my workflows and my efficiency with on mobile, and I use my phone a ton. But it may also help me form new habits that are better, right? And I've been kind of comfortable with Android for a while, and I figure it's good to switch it up every once in a while, probably. I know that these vendors don't want you to move from platform to platform, but anyway, we'll see. I'll do another live stream after I actually make the switch. Again, it technically was from the S24 Ultra, and if anybody has any questions about what that is like, I'm happy to go through it. I experienced it. It's very similar to S23 Ultra with some quality of life improvements and some temporary software improvements that'll get better. Camera's a mixed bag. Some's better, some's worse. But it wasn't a huge upgrade for me experientially. So we'll see. I'm excited, but I'm also more nervous than I thought it would be. This thing is so central. Our mobile phones are so central to our lives that, like, yeah, I'm nervous about it, but cautiously optimistic. So we'll see. Anyway, thanks for watching this silly little live stream. And I'm going to go with my family to get some food and then pick this thing up. Catch you on the other side.